She vanished on a Tuesday morning in a quiet suburban neighborhood where the only sound was the distant hum of lawnmowers and the occasional bark of a dog. A mother of 3. Locked house. No forced entry, no struggle, nothing out of place except the empty space where she should have been. Security cameras caught her walking out the front door with a single suitcase, calm, deliberate, as if she had somewhere ordinary to go. Then the cameras lost her. Her phone kept pinging. Her credit cards kept spending. Weeks turned into months of digital footprints in cities she had never mentioned, places her family had never heard her talk about. And years later, when an unidentified body turned up, hundreds of miles away, and a genealogy DNA test finally put a name to the remains the same. DNA profile matched. A second living woman who swore she had never met the missing mother, never shared a drop of blood with her, and had no idea why science insisted they were the same person. This is the story of the vanishing homemaker. Before we begin, if you enjoy carefully researched true crime documentaries based on verified facts, don't forget to like the video, subscribe to the channel, and turn on notifications. Now, let's go back. It began in the spring of 2014 in a tidy 2-story colonial on Maple Ridge Drive. Sarah Ellison was 38 years old. She had 3 children, ages 12, 9 and 6, a husband who worked long hours in pharmaceutical sales, and a life that looked from the outside completely ordinary. Neighbors described her as reliable, quiet, the kind of woman who always had a casserole ready for a new family on the block and never missed a school recital. On the morning of May 13th, she kissed her kids goodbye at the bus stop, waved to the neighbor across the street, and walked back inside. By 9:17 am, the house was locked. By 9:42 am, the security camera at the front door recorded her leaving again, this time carrying a dark rolling suitcase. She did not look back. She did not appear hurried. She simply walked down the driveway, turned left onto the sidewalk, and disappeared from the frame. Her husband Mark came home at 6:30 that evening, expecting dinner and the usual chaos of homework and television. Instead, he found an empty house, the children's backpacks still by the door, the kitchen counters wiped clean. He called her phone. It rang once and went to voicemail. He called again. Same result. By 8 p.m., he had contacted her sister, her closest friend, and finally the police. Officers arrived within the hour. They found no signs of forced entry. The alarm system had been properly disarmed and rearmed. Sarah's purse was gone, but her laptop sat open on the kitchen table with a half-finished grocery list still on the screen. Her car remained in the garage. The only thing missing was Sarah herself and that single suitcase. Detectives treated it first as a possible voluntary disappearance. Adult women leave. It happens. But the digital trail that followed made the theory harder to hold. Within 48 hours, Sarah's phone pinged a cell tower 300 miles south near a rest stop off Interstate 75. 2 days later, it registered in a motel parking lot outside Atlanta. Credit card charges appeared. Gas, a cheap meal, a prepaid phone. Then the activity shifted west. A charge at a drugstore in Birmingham. Another at a gas station near Memphis. The pattern was irregular, sometimes silent for days, then suddenly active again in a new state. Police tracked the signal when they could. Twice they arrived at locations within an hour of a ping and found nothing. No Sarah, no suitcase, no witnesses who remembered a woman matching her description. Mark insisted she would never leave the children. Her sister said the same. Friends described a woman who planned every birthday party months in advance and kept a color-coded calendar on the refrigerator. There were no recent arguments, no secret debts, no hidden affairs that anyone could find. The suitcase, when investigators reviewed the footage frame by frame, appeared half full at most. She had taken almost nothing of sentimental value. Her wedding ring was still in the jewelry box on her dresser. Weeks stretched into months. The phone continued its strange migration. Texas, then Oklahoma, then a brief spike near the New Mexico border before going dark for good in late July. The credit card stopped after a final charge at a truck stop outside Albuquerque. Missing person posters went up. Local news ran the story for a few cycles and then moved on. The children asked fewer questions as the years passed. Mark eventually packed away her clothes. Life in the grim way it does continued without her. 6 years later, in the fall of 2020, a hiker in the high desert of southern Utah found human remains partially buried beneath a rocky outcrop. The body had been there a long time. Animals and weather had done their work. There was no identification, no clothing that survived, no personal effects. The medical examiner determined the remains belonged to a woman roughly between 35 and 45 years old. Cause of death could not be established with certainty, though trauma to the skull was noted. The case sat in the files of a rural sheriff's department until a technician submitted a DNA sample to a public genealogy database in early 2022, hoping distant relatives might come forward. They did. The match was strong. Multiple cousins on both sides of Sarah Ellison's family tree lit up the screen. Investigators contacted Mark. He provided a reference sample from one of the children. The probability was overwhelming. The unidentified woman in Utah was Sarah Ellison. After 8 years, the vanishing homemaker had been found. Except she hadn't, because the same DNA profile run through the same database produced a second high-confidence match. This time, the name that appeared was not Sarah Ellison. It was a living woman named Claire Whitmore, 41 years old, residing in a small town in northern Idaho. Claire worked as a bookkeeper for a local hardware store. She had never been married. She had no children. She had never set foot in the state where Sarah disappeared, and she had never heard the name Ellison until 2 detectives knocked on her door. Claire was cooperative. She allowed a new DNA sample to be taken. She provided childhood medical records, school photographs, a birth certificate issued in a different state entirely. Everything about her life checked out as ordinary and documented. Yet the laboratory results came back identical. Mitochondrial DNA, autosomal markers, the full profile Claire Whitmore and the Utah remains, and by extension, Sarah Ellison shared the same genetic signature at a level that statistics declared virtually impossible for unrelated individuals. Investigators flew Claire to Utah for a formal interview. She sat across from the detectives and listened as they laid out the timeline. She shook her head through most of it. She had never owned a suitcase like the one in the security footage. She had never used the credit cards that traveled across the South and Southwest. She had never been to Maple Ridge Drive. When they showed her photographs of Sarah smiling at a school fair, holding her youngest child standing beside Mark and a Christmas card, Claire studied them carefully and said only that. The woman looked familiar in the way strangers sometimes do nothing more. The children were older now. The eldest was in college. They provided additional samples. The genetic link held. Sarah's maternal line matched Claire's maternal line with perfect consistency. Yet Claire's mother was alive, living in Oregon, and her DNA did not match the Utah remains at all. The paternal side produced similar contradictions. Somewhere in the records a fundamental error seemed to exist, but every test repeated the same impossible result. Forensic genealogists were brought in. They rebuilt family trees going back 4 and 5 generations. They found no evidence of switched infants, no hospital mix-ups, no secret adoptions. That could explain the overlap. Sarah's birth records were clean. Claire's were clean. The only anomaly was the DNA itself. Then a new detail surfaced. In the months before Sarah disappeared, she had made 3 quiet visits to a private clinic 2 towns over. The appointments were listed under a slightly altered name, paid in cash. Medical records obtained by warrant showed she had undergone a series of consultations related to fertility and genetic screening. The notes were sparse. One line stood out: patient expressed concern about inherited traits and requested anonymity regarding any testing. No further explanation was recorded. The clinic had closed years earlier. The physician who treated her had died. Mark remembered none of it. Sarah had never mentioned fertility issues. Their 3 children had been conceived without difficulty. Yet the clinic visits were real, confirmed by payment records and a receptionist who still recalled the quiet woman who always arrived early and left without small talk. Claire, when told of the clinic, had nothing to add. She had never sought genetic testing of any kind. Her own medical history was unremarkable. The investigation stalled again. The Udall remains were officially identified as Sarah Ellison on the strength of the family matches and the exclusion of other possibilities. A quiet burial was arranged. Mark and the children attended. Claire was invited. She declined, but the living match would not go away. Every few months, a new laboratory, a new technique, a new expert confirmed the same result. Claire Whitmore's DNA was indistinguishable from the DNA extracted from the bones in the desert. Science insisted they were the same person. Reality insisted they were not. In 2024, a cold case unit took one final pass at the digital trail left by Sarah's phone and cards in 2014. In 2024, a cold case unit took one final pass at the digital trail left by Sarah's phone and cards in 2014. Using improved location data and newly available surveillance from private businesses along the route, they reconstructed a more precise path. The phone had not wandered randomly. It had followed a deliberate line of secondary roads and small-town motels, avoiding major highways after the first week. One charge, previously overlooked, placed the card at a self-storage facility on the outskirts of a town in western Colorado for a single night. The facility's old paper logs, still in a box in a back office, listed a unit rented under a false name for cash. The unit had been cleared out years earlier, but a maintenance worker remembered a woman matching Sarah's description who paid extra to keep the transaction off the books. He remembered the suitcase. The worker also remembered something else. The woman had not been alone. A second person, taller, quieter face, mostly hidden by a hood, had helped carry boxes into the unit. The worker never saw that person's face clearly. He never saw the second person leave. No further evidence of that companion has ever been found. Claire Whitmore still lives in the same small Idaho town. She still works at the hardware store. She still insists she has never met Sarah Ellison, never shared a secret with her, never stood in the same room. Detectives visit her once a year. Each time the conversation is polite and brief. Each time the DNA results are the same. Sarah Ellison's children are adults now. They keep a single photograph of their mother on a shelf in the house where she disappeared. Sometimes they wonder what she was carrying in that suitcase. Sometimes they wonder who walked beside her on the security footage that the camera never quite captured. And sometimes late at night, they wonder whether the woman whose bones lie in a Udall cemetery is truly the mother who kissed them goodbye on a Tuesday. morning in May, or whether the real Sarah Ellison is still out there somewhere, living under a name that science cannot yet explain. The house on Maple Ridge Drive was sold years ago. The new owners never heard the story. The security camera was replaced long ago. The suitcase was never recovered. And the second living match continues quietly, impossibly to exist. If this story stayed with you the way it stays with so many others who have heard it, take a second right now to like this video and subscribe so you don't miss the next one. Drop a comment if you've followed this case before or if it is new to you. Your support genuinely helps. These stories keep being told.